The ship screamed as it tore through the alien sky. Metal cracked, fire roared, alarms filled the cabin. The human woman, Ilara, held onto her seat, her heart racing faster than the engines that were breaking apart around her. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the planet's surface rushing toward her. When she opened her eyes, there was silence. The ship was broken, smoke rising in thin gray lines into the pink alien sky. Her head ached, her hands trembled, and every muscle in her body screamed with pain. But she was alive, though she wished she knew for how long. The place around her was strange. The trees were taller than buildings, their leaves glowing faintly as if they held their own light. The ground was soft with moss, and the air smelled of sweet fruit mixed with smoke. It was beautiful and dangerous. At the same time, Ilara staggered to her feet, looking around with wide eyes. There was no sound of people, no voices, no rescue teams, only the endless forest. Her survival training told her to stay calm. First, she searched the wreckage, hoping for supplies. She found a broken ration pack, half a bottle of water, and a torn blanket. Not enough for more than a day. Fear crept into her chest if no one came. How would she survive in this strange world? The sun fell quickly, painting the sky orange and then black. Shadows grew longer, darker, until the wreckage looked like a tomb. She gathered broken metal pieces, striking them together, trying to make sparks. After many tries, she managed to light a small fire. The warmth calmed her body, but her mind refused to rest. She felt it, the heavy weight of eyes watching her from the trees. Ilara froze. The fire crackled, but the forest was too quiet. No birds, no wind, only silence and those glowing dots in the dark. At first, she thought they were stars. Then one moved, blinking, drawing closer. Her heart pounded as she gripped a sharp piece of metal like a weapon. She whispered to herself, "Stay calm. It could be an animal. Just an animal." But deep down, she knew these eyes were intelligent. Branches cracked. Slow, heavy steps came closer. She could see the figure now, tall, broad-shouldered, with skin that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. Its shape was humanoid but not human. Its eyes glowed like burning embers, locked on her with something that felt like curiosity, or maybe hunger. Ilara's throat went dry. Should she run? Hide? Fight? She tightened her grip on the metal shard, raising it toward the figure. The fire flickered and the glow revealed more of him. Scars across his arms, strange marks across his chest. This was not a beast. This was someone who lived here, and she had crashed into his world. For a long moment they stared at each other across the fire. The silence pressed between them, heavier than the crash itself. The alien tilted his head slowly as if studying her. Ilara forced herself not to blink. She was terrified, but something about the way he stood, the way he didn't rush forward, made her pause. Then, as quickly as he appeared, he stepped back, fading into the shadows. The glowing eyes vanished, swallowed by the forest. The silence returned, but now it carried a weight she could not escape. She was not alone. And the thought chilled her more than the cold night air. Ilara curled near the fire, clutching the torn blanket around her shoulders. Every crack of the forest made her flinch. Every rustle sounded like footsteps. Sleep refused to come. Her mind replayed the crash, the fire, and those glowing eyes. She whispered into the night, "Please, someone find me. Please." But deep down, she already knew the truth. Rescue might never come. The only thing she had now was silence, firelight, and the memory of an alien gaze watching from the dark. And so her first night on the alien planet ended. Not with rest, not with hope, but with a promise of something unknown waiting in the shadows. The morning came slowly, light dripping through the giant glowing leaves. Ilara's eyes opened with a jolt, her body stiff from sleeping on the cold ground. The fire had died. Only smoke remained, and her throat felt like sand. She pushed herself up, clutching the broken metal shard she had kept all night. Her mind replayed the memory of those glowing eyes. She wondered if she had dreamed it, but the footprints near the wreckage told her the truth. Someone or something had been watching. She spent the morning searching through the wreckage again. Her stomach growled like an angry beast, reminding her she had not eaten. The half ration she found yesterday was gone. Her hands shook as she forced herself to chew bitter roots she had picked near the moss. They tasted foul, but at least they gave her strength. Every crunch of the roots echoed in her ears. Every shadow made her think the alien was still there, waiting. By afternoon, she decided to leave the crash site and explore. Maybe there was water, maybe fruits she could eat. She wrapped the blanket over her shoulders, tied a strip of cloth around her bleeding arm, and stepped into the forest. The air was heavy, filled with the hum of unseen insects. Colors surrounded her: blue vines, golden flowers, birds with crystal wings darting between branches. It was beautiful, but the beauty felt sharp like glass. It was not made for her. She felt like an intruder. After hours of wandering, she found a small stream. The water shimmered like liquid silver. Her heart leapt. She dropped to her knees, cupped her hands, and drank deeply. Coolness spread through her body, easing her dry throat. For a moment, she almost felt human again, alive again. But then came the sound. A heavy snap of wood behind her. She froze. Her breath stopped in her chest. Slowly, she turned her head, and there he was. The alien from last night, standing at the edge of the stream, watching her again. His skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Scars ran across his body like maps of old battles. He was tall, towering over her, with arms strong enough to break stone. But his eyes, glowing orange, held no rage, only curiosity. Still, fear clamped her chest like iron. Ilara scrambled back, nearly falling into the stream. She raised her shard of metal, pointing it toward him with shaking hands. "Stay away," she whispered, though she knew he could not understand her words. The alien tilted his head, the same way he had done by the fire. Slow, careful, he lifted, his empty hands into the air. It was a gesture she recognized. He meant no harm, but could she trust that? They stood there, two strangers from different worlds, neither moving. The silence between them was louder than the stream rushing by. Ilara's mind screamed at her to run, yet her feet stayed rooted to the ground. The alien took one step forward. Her breath caught. Then another step, slow, as if he feared startling her. Ilara raised her shard higher, ready to strike if he rushed. But he didn't rush. Instead, he crouched near the stream, dipping his hand into the water. He drank, then looked at her, as if to say, "See, it is safe." Ilara blinked, lowering her shard slightly. Was he helping her? She swallowed hard, her throat dry again, and bent to drink more water, her eyes never leaving his. For a few minutes, they drank together, human and alien, side by side. When she finished, she noticed something. The alien had placed something on the ground near her, a small fruit glowing faintly like it was carved from light. She stared at it, unsure. He nudged it closer with one long finger. His eyes steady on hers, Ilara hesitated, fear battling hunger inside her chest. Finally, she picked it up and sniffed it. The sweet scent made her mouth water. She took a small bite, expecting poison. But instead, sweetness exploded across her tongue. She gasped softly, her stomach easing as she chewed. The alien let out a low sound, almost like a purr. Was it approval? For the first time, Ilara's fear shifted. Not gone, not forgotten, but softer. She realized this creature had saved her. First with firelight, now with food. Maybe he was not her enemy. Maybe he was her only chance to survive. As the sun dipped lower, the alien stood and stepped back. He gave her one last look, his eyes glowing brighter in the dusk. Then he turned and disappeared into the forest. Ilara stared after him, the fruit's taste still on her lips, her hands still trembling, her heart still racing. But now she was trembling not only with fear, she was trembling with something new, hope. That night, when she returned to the wreckage and lit another fire, she found herself looking into the forest again, waiting, wondering, would he come back? Would he bring more food, more silence, more of those strange burning eyes that made her feel both afraid and alive? For the first time since the crash, Ilara whispered into the night not for rescue, but for the alien. Please, come back. And the silence of the forest answered her with promise, not emptiness. The night dragged on, long and restless. Ilara sat by her weak fire, the fruit's sweetness still on her tongue. Her stomach wanted more, but her mind wanted answers. Why had the alien helped her? Why had he not attacked when he had the chance? Her eyes kept darting into the dark, hoping, fearing, waiting for him to return, but he did not. Only the forest stayed awake, whispering with its strange songs. Ilara tightened the torn blanket around her and whispered to herself, "You can't depend on him, you have to survive on your own." But the words felt hollow because deep inside she already knew she was not alone anymore. When dawn came, hunger tore through her like fire. She searched the wreckage again, but there was nothing left. Her hands shook as she tore open strange plants near the crash. Some oozed sour liquid, others stung her skin. Nothing looked safe. Nothing looked right. Her body ached with weakness. She needed food, or she would not last. Another day. By midday she forced herself into the forest. Her legs carried her slowly, every step heavy. The trees loomed like watchful giants. The ground shifted under her boots, soft moss hiding roots like traps. She listened for the alien, but heard only the hum of insects. Her throat dry, her stomach loud. She stumbled toward the stream again. There by the water she found him. The alien was crouched near the bank, pulling long fish-like creatures from the water with his bare hands. Their scales flashed like metal as he tossed them onto the ground. Ilara froze, heart thundering. He had not seen her yet. Should she run? Should she watch? Before she could decide, he looked up. Their eyes met across the water. For a moment she thought he might chase her. Instead, he lifted one of the fish and placed it on a flat stone. He gestured with his long fingers, pointing at her, then at the fish. An invitation. Ilara shook her head at first, stepping back, but her body betrayed her. Her stomach twisted with hunger, so sharp she nearly doubled over. She pressed her hand against it, glaring at him. Was this his plan to make her depend on him? Still, she could not stop herself from moving closer. Slowly, step by step, she crossed to the stone. The alien crouched and struck the fish with a sharp bone tool. Its body stilled, then he set it near the fire he had built. Ilara watched as he rubbed sticks together, sparks flying into dried moss until flames grew bright. Her breath caught. He was showing her how to cook, not just feeding her, but teaching her. The smell of roasted flesh filled the air. Her mouth watered, her body trembling. When he pushed the cooked fish toward her, she hesitated only a second before grabbing it. The first bite nearly made her cry. Warm, soft, filling. She ate quickly, too quickly, until her stomach finally eased. The alien watched her, silent, his glowing eyes steady on her face. Not with cruelty, not with mockery, but something she couldn't name. When she finished, she dropped the bones and whispered, "Thank you." He tilted his head, repeating, a low sound, "Da." His voice deep, rough, broken like stones grinding. Ilara blinked. Was he trying to copy her? Her chest tightened with a strange warmth. A connection, small but real. The hours passed as they worked together. He showed her which roots were safe, which berries glowed with poison. She showed him how to use sharp metal scraps from the wreckage as blades. Though their words were broken, their hands spoke for them. She laughed once, short and surprised when he tried to mimic her gestures and failed. The sound echoed across the forest, light and human. He paused, watching her with an expression she almost understood, as if he liked the sound. But peace, never, lasted long on this planet. As night fell, they carried food back to the wreckage. The fire burned brighter, their bellies warm. Then the forest stirred. A growl broke the silence, low and dangerous. Ilara jumped to her feet, clutching her shard. Eyes flashed in the darkness. Dozens, not one. Predators, sleek and fast, their bodies slinking from the shadows. The alien, snarled, stepping in front of her, his body a shield. Ilara's breath caught. Why would he protect her? The creatures circled closer, teeth glinting in the firelight. The alien raised his bone blade, his scars burning in the glow. Ilara gripped her shard tight, her fear burning into courage. Together, human and alien stood side by side, ready to fight. The fire crackled, the predators growled, and the night held its breath. And in that moment, Ilara knew one thing with certainty. Her survival was no longer hers alone. It was theirs. The predators circled like shadows with teeth, their growls shaking the night. Ilara's hand trembled as she raised her shard of metal. Her heart pounded in her ears louder than the crackling fire. Beside her, the alien stood tall, blade of bone in his grip. He did not flinch, did not back away. Instead, he made a sound, a low growl of his own. The beasts paused, uneasy, as if they respected his warning. Then one lunged, fast as lightning. Ilara gasped, but the alien moved quicker. His blade slashed. Through the air, striking the creature across the face, it yelped and tumbled back into the dark. The rest snarled, but they hesitated now. Together, predator and prey measured each other in the firelight. After tense moments, the beasts finally slipped away into the trees, their glowing eyes fading. Ilara collapsed onto the ground, shaking. Her chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. The alien looked down at her, his own chest heaving but his gaze steady. He had protected her, risked his life for her. The truth of it sank into her bones. They were no longer strangers, not anymore. The silence that followed was heavy, but different than before. It was not the silence of fear, but of connection. Ilara met his glowing eyes and whispered, "Thank you." He tilted his head, his lips moving slowly as if he wanted to repeat the sound. Hunk. The word cracked from his throat, broken but real. Ilara's heart stumbled. He had tried. Her fear softened, replaced by something fragile and new. The next morning they worked side by side. The alien showed her how to weave large leaves into mats that kept the rain out. She taught him how to tie knots with strips of cloth from the wreckage. They built a stronger shelter near the wreck, one that would last through storms. Every movement, every shared glance built a quiet rhythm between them. Ilara began to laugh when he tried to mimic her words and failed. He would respond with a low rumble, half amusement, half confusion. Slowly, the silence that once felt sharp began to feel safe. Food became easier too. The alien brought her more glowing fruits, showed her which roots were safe. Together they hunted smaller animals, cooking them over fire. Ilara grew stronger, her wounds healing, her steps lighter. Sometimes she caught herself smiling at nothing. Sometimes she caught herself staring at him, at the scars on his arms, at the way he stood guard whenever she rested. And every time she realized what she was doing, her cheeks burned with heat. At night, they sat by the fire. Ilara taught him simple words: water, fire, food, safe. He repeated them clumsily, but each attempt filled her with pride. In return, he taught her hand gestures, signs from his people. A curl of the fingers meant danger. A fist to the chest meant trust. She repeated them until he nodded with approval. They were learning each other. One word, one sign at a time. But beneath the warmth, there was still fragility. One evening, as they shared a roasted fish, a loud boom echoed in the distance. The ground shook, trees trembled, birds scattered into the sky. Ilara jumped to her feet, fear surging through her. The alien's eyes narrowed, his hand tightening around his blade. Something was out there, something bigger than the predators. Ilara's voice shook. What was that? Of course he didn't understand the words, but he understood her fear. He stepped closer, his broad frame shielding her again. She realized she had leaned into him without thinking. Her heart beat faster, not only from fear but from something she could not admit yet. Later that night, when the forest calmed, she sat beside the fire staring at him. He was silent as always, but his eyes glowed softly in the dark. She whispered, "Why are you helping me?" Knowing he couldn't answer. But for a second she swore she saw something in his eyes, something softer than curiosity, deeper than survival. Her chest tightened at the thought. Could an alien feel the same things a human did? The bond between them was fragile, like thin glass. One wrong step and it could shatter. Yet every shared meal, every guarded night, every broken word they learned together made it stronger. Ilara no longer felt like a castaway waiting for rescue. She felt like part of something new, something dangerous, something beautiful. When she lay down to sleep, her head resting on the woven mat they had made together, she whispered into the firelight, "Don't leave me." The alien, though he did not understand, stayed awake beside her, watching the trees, guarding her dreams. And in the silence of that night, their fragile bond became the most precious thing either of them had. The days passed quietly, but the quiet never lasted. Ilara and the alien, whom she had started calling Kale in her mind, built their fragile routine. They hunted, gathered, drank from the silver stream. At night, they sat by the fire, sharing silence and half-formed words. Each day felt like progress. But deep inside, Ilara knew danger was always waiting. The warning came with the wind. It howled through the glowing trees, bending their towering bodies. The sky darkened faster than she had ever seen. Clouds twisted, heavy and black, rolling like waves across the horizon. Ilara's heart sank. Her breath quickened. She had seen storms on Earth before, but nothing like this. This storm felt alive. Kale noticed first. He dropped the half-woven mat in his hands and barked a sound, sharp and urgent. He pointed toward the wreckage. Gesturing for her to move, Ilara scrambled, following him as the first drops of rain fell, thick and heavy as stones. By the time they reached the shelter, the storm had arrived. The wind roared like a beast, tearing through the forest. Trees bent, their glowing leaves ripped away and scattered into the black sky. Rain slammed against their shelter, soaking through the woven mats. Ilara clutched the blanket tight, her teeth chattering. The fire outside hissed and died, leaving them. In cold darkness, Kale braced himself against the side of the shelter, his massive frame holding the wall steady. Ilara tried to help, pressing her small body against the gaps, but the storm was stronger than both of them. Lightning split the sky, white and blinding. For a second, Ilara saw the entire forest, not empty, not safe, but alive with shadows. Strange. Creatures fleeing, others circling in the chaos. The thunder followed, a deafening roar that made her ears ring. Her chest tightened, panic clawing at her throat. "I can't do this," she whispered, her voice shaking. Kale looked at her then, his glowing eyes steady even in the storm. He reached out, placing his scarred hand against her arm. The warmth of his touch steadied her racing heart. She gripped his hand back, clinging to him as the world outside tore itself apart. The shelter groaned, water pouring through the roof. Kale roared something in his own tongue, straining to hold the structure upright. Ilara knew it would not last. The wind ripped a hole in the wall, rain slashing through like knives, cold drenched her, stealing her breath. Kale pulled her close, wrapping his body around hers, shielding her from the icy flood. Her face pressed against his chest. She felt his heartbeat, slow, steady, unbreakable. Her fear softened, though the storm raged louder. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning. The shelter collapsed in the end, torn apart by the furious wind. Kale dragged Ilara beneath a fallen tree, shielding her with leaves and his own frame. The rain hammered, the ground shook, but together they endured. Ilara's body trembled from the cold, her lips numb. She whispered through her chattering teeth, "We're not going to make it." Kale growled low, his hand pressing against hers, firm, refusing to let go. His warmth kept her alive when the storm tried to steal everything. Finally, as suddenly as it came, the storm began to fade. The thunder rolled farther away. The lightning dimmed. The rain softened into a whisper. Ilara opened her eyes, her body heavy, her head resting against Cale's shoulder. He was soaked, bleeding from scratches where branches had struck, but still holding her close, still protecting, still enduring. Her throat tightened as she realized the truth. She was alive because of him. When the sky cleared, the forest was unrecognizable. Trees lay broken, the stream overflowed, the wreckage scattered farther than before. Their small shelter was gone, torn to nothing. Alara felt despair crush her chest. "How do we survive this?" she whispered, voice thin. Cale turned to her, his glowing eyes locking on hers. He lifted his fist to his chest, the sign he had taught her for trust. Alara's breath caught, her fear colliding with something warmer. Hope. That night they built a new fire with trembling hands. The flames rose, fragile against the broken forest, but real. Alara leaned against him without thinking. Too tired. To fight the closeness, Kyle did not move away. The silence between them had changed again. It was no longer fragile, no longer empty. It was the silence of two souls who had faced death together and survived. Yet as she closed her eyes, she remembered the shadows she had seen in the lightning, shapes that were not beasts, not storms, shapes that walked on two legs, searching the forest. She pressed closer to Cale, whispering, "We're not alone." And in the deep night after the storm, the forest whispered back with secrets she did not want to hear. The storm had passed, but its mark remained. The forest was broken, trees torn apart, the air heavy with the smell of wet earth. Alara and Cale walked through the ruins of what had been their fragile shelter. Her heart sank as she saw the wreckage scattered farther than ever. The storm had taken everything they had built, yet she was still alive, and she knew it was because of him. For a while they worked in silence, gathering what scraps could be saved, weaving leaves into mats again. Cale's movements were slow but steady, his strength unbroken despite the cuts across his arms. Alara tried to keep busy, but her thoughts kept returning to what she had seen in the lightning. Shadows that were not beasts, shadows that walked like her. Others were here, others searching. That evening, as they sat by the small fire they had rebuilt, the forest gave her the answer. A sound echoed through the trees. Not growls, not thunder, but voices, alien voices, sharp and commanding, carried by the wind. Alara's blood ran cold. Cale tensed immediately, his glowing eyes narrowing. He knew those sounds, his hand gripped his blade, his body rigid like stone. The voices drew closer, mixed with the crack of branches and the glow of strange lights. Alara's chest tightened. Were these rescuers or hunters? Her heart screamed for rescue, but her instincts whispered danger. Cale grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the fire into the shadows. He pressed a finger to his lips, a gesture he had learned from her. Silence. They crouched in the undergrowth, watching as figures moved into the clearing. Alara's breath caught. They were aliens, tall and armored, their weapons glowing faintly in the dark. Their faces were cruel, their movements sharp. These were not saviors. They searched the wreckage with ruthless precision, tearing through the debris like scavengers. Alara's chest ached with a painful truth. If she went to them, they might not rescue her. They might cage her, enslave her. Or worse, Cale's grip on her arm tightened, his eyes met hers, burning with warning. He shook his head slowly, clearly telling her, "Don't go." But Alara's mind raced. If they were her only chance to leave this planet, could she ignore it? She had dreamed of rescue since the crash, dreamed of seeing Earth again. Her lips trembled as she whispered inside her heart. "What do I choose?" The armored aliens shouted, their voices echoing. One of them held up a piece of her ship, its broken panel gleaming in the firelight. They were close now, too close, her throat closed with fear. She could run to them, reveal herself, maybe they would save her, maybe. But then her eyes fell on Cale. His body crouched low, ready to fight if they found them. He would face them, alone, outnumbered, just to protect her. Her chest burned with a sudden sharp truth. He was not her captor, he was not her enemy. He was her shield, her bond, her fragile hope. Leaving him would mean betraying the very one who had kept her alive. Her heart hammered as she made her choice. She reached for Cale's hand, gripping it tight. His eyes widened, surprise flashing in their glowing depths. She shook her head firmly, whispering, "I stay." He could not understand the words, but he understood her voice, her touch. Something softened in his gaze. The fire of battle was still there, but now it was joined by something deeper, something almost like relief. The armored aliens grew frustrated, shouting louder, smashing parts of the wreck. They did not find her. Not yet. But Ilara knew they would not stop. They would return. They would hunt. The forest was no longer only filled with beasts. It was filled with enemies. When the invaders finally moved on, their lights fading into the night, Ilara and Cale remained hidden. Her body shook, her breath uneven, but her hand stayed in his. She had chosen him, chosen this bond, chosen survival. By his side, her dream of rescue was gone, replaced by something she never expected, a fragile but unshakable truth. She belonged here, not with strangers, not with those who saw her as a prize, but with him. That night, as they sat by the fire again, Ilara leaned against Cale's arm, her voice low. "I chose you," she whispered. He did not know the words, but his steady warmth told her he understood. And in the darkness beyond their flames, the forest whispered again. The real danger had only just begun, but so had their bond, strong enough now to face whatever came. The fire burned low, its glow soft against the broken forest. Ilara sat close to Cale, her body wrapped in the torn blanket, her hand still resting near his. The storm had passed, the hunters had left, but fear lingered in the silence. Yet there was also something else, something warmer. For the first time since the crash, she did not feel completely lost. She had chosen him, and that choice filled her chest with a strange kind of peace. Days turned into weeks, and survival became less of a struggle. Kyle taught her which roots could be boiled to make bitter but filling soup. He showed her glowing insects that kept beasts away at night. She taught him new words: shelter, safe, together. His rough voice stumbled over them, but each word was a step closer to understanding. Their bond grew like the fire they built every night, fragile but steady. Ilara no longer whispered to the stars for rescue. She whispered to Cale, even when he did not understand. The forest changed, too. What once felt like a cage now felt alive with possibility. The stream became their meeting place each morning, the fire their sanctuary each night. They built a stronger shelter together, weaving branches, binding stone, sealing gaps with moss. It was not much, but it was home. And in the quiet hours, when Cale watched her with those glowing eyes, Ilara felt something stirring deep inside. A feeling she had thought was impossible here, a feeling she had not dared to name. It came one evening as the sky bled into red and violet. Ilara sat weaving strips of cloth into a bag, her fingers moving slowly. Cale returned from the forest carrying fruit and fish, his scars shining with sweat. When he placed the food down, he lingered near her, his gaze steady. She looked up, and the world seemed to still for a long moment. There was no storm, no danger, no fear, only him. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from something far more terrifying: desire. She reached out without thinking, brushing her fingers across his scarred arm. His skin was rough, warm, alive. Kyle froze, eyes wide, then lowered his head closer to her. Ilara swallowed, her lips trembling. She whispered, "Safe." The word they had built together. He touched his chest with his fist, repeating in his deep, broken voice, "Safe." And for the first time, Ilara leaned against him fully, her head resting against his chest, her body finding comfort in the steady rhythm of his heart. That night she did not sleep alone. Kyle lay beside her, his warmth chasing away the chill of the forest. The silence that once frightened her now felt like a cradle. She whispered to herself, "I'm not alone anymore." And in the shadows of their shelter, she knew the bond between them had changed. It was no longer only survival. It was something greater. Time passed, and with it, change came. Alara began to notice her body felt different. Her stomach churned in the mornings. Her strength came and went in strange waves. At first, she thought it was the food, the stress, the storms. But deep inside, she knew. The truth came like a spark. She carried more than just hope now. She carried new life, fear and wonder mixed in her chest. A human woman marooned on a strange world, an alien warrior scarred by survival, and between them a child that belonged to both. Alara touched her belly one morning as the realization sank in. Tears filled her eyes, not of sorrow, but of awe. She whispered, "New life," and Kale tilted his head, watching her with silent confusion. She took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. His glowing eyes widened, his body stilling as if the forest itself had hushed. For a long time he said nothing, but his hand remained there steady and warm. That night Kale did not sleep. He stood guard at the edge of the fire, his blade ready, his eyes sharp. But when he looked back at her, there was no fear in his gaze. There was something deeper, heavier, something that tied him to her forever. And Alara knew her choice had been the right one. Rescue would never come. But she did not need it. She had found more than survival, more than safety. She had found love. The forest whispered in the wind. Predators watched from the shadows. Hunters searched in the distance, but none of it mattered. Alara and Kyle sat side by side, their fire burning against the darkness, and in her heart, she carried the promise of a future. A fragile new life born of two worlds. A hope strong enough to outlive storms, hunters, and silence. The story of her crash had begun in fear, but now in the arms of an alien who had become her home. It was a story of love, of survival, of a child who would carry both their blood. From tragedy, something greater had risen. A human woman marooned with an alien, and together their love brought new life.